welcome back to our show. Today I'm going to talk about Superman. Now you'll probably hear some noises outside. The windows are open. We're in the middle of a heat wave. So, that's the way it goes. So, there we go. So back to Superman. Superman is the James Gunn film that's just been released and has done extremely well on its opening weekend. It's the reboot of the DCU from the DCEU, which was those depressing Zack Snyder films that not a lot of people liked, even though there was a fanboy online community that thought they were the most amazing things ever. Generally, if you ask people, it's like, they're okay, but they never really replaced the various other versions of Superman and Batman in people's minds, and the characters that popped most was Wonder Woman and Aquaman from that series, which were meant to be the minor characters. So it was a thing that kind of died, even though some people are still complaining that it should have been given a chance, even though they were given tons of chances, and everyone seemed to agree that it wasn't quite what you wanted from a superhero film. But they were kind of reacting against Marvel, trying to do something different, but it never really worked. So it was a case of they kind of scrapped that a few years ago and they brought James Gunn in to take over. James Gunn had made the Guardians of the Galaxy films, but before that he'd also made Slither and Super, and he'd written Scooby-Doo and Dawn of the Dead remake. And generally he'd helped out Marvel a lot and some other films, and was viewed as a safe pair of hands, someone who understood comic books, someone who could do characters that were not well known and make them well known, but also could add humour without humour being the obnoxious level that Marvel sometimes managed to do, where it was just humour rather than humour and drama. Gunn's always good at mixing the humour and drama, so there is humour, so it's not drudgery the way DCU was, but there's also drama, so it's not just a quip factory. So he had a way of doing things. He was brought on to the DCEU to do the Suicide Squad when he was far from Guardians of the Galaxy, which we all know about, and then went back to do it, the third one. So by the time he was doing the third one, he was going back over to run DC at a certain point. It was kind of well known, so it was like one of those things. It's like, okay, he's come back to the boss of DC. So they got to know him through the Suicide Squad, which was not a big hit, but it was released during the pandemic, and it was mainly on HBO Max, and everyone liked it. It was one of those films that everyone liked. Like it led to the Peacemaker TV show that's been a big success, and it was a sign that he could take what were characters that people weren't so used to and give them life, and you could expand the universe by creating characters that other people could then maybe go and do things with. That he could create things that were in a universe that already existed, but he could also expand it in a way, which is what the DCU needed, because DC is a weird thing where they have the holy trinity of superheroes, which is Batman, Superman and Wonder Woman, and they have a bunch of interesting other characters around that, but they don't have the approachability of Marvel. Marvel had Hulk, Marvel had Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. They were much more comfier characters, while DC was much more of a set of characters who were gods on Earth and were a bit more remote. I always was more of a DC guy though, to be honest, because DC was the first thing I read as comics when I was a kid. I loved Batman. Superman was just coming out in the cinema, and I just liked DC characters more. But I can enjoy Marvel stuff, but Marvel never really got me the same way DC comics did. So I was always more of a DC guy, which meant even when the films were bad, I still wanted to see them. And DC always had the best animated stuff. I mean, the DC animation from the Batman animated series onwards, because it was the same team doing it. I mean, the 1990s and 2000s were a great time for the animated stuff in the DC. 2010s, when they went into the DCU, less good, but there's still some good things. But there was a kind of thing of the quality control was down a bit. But hopefully that will change now. So that's all the background. All these changes were made. All these things that happened with Superman and DC It was all a bunch of people coming and going from DC for a while. So now they've actually had their first genuine hit in a long time. I mean, the last genuine hit DC's actually had was Wonder Woman, and that was like in 2016 or something. It's been a while. Before that was Batman v Superman, which was a hit for like one weekend and then died because it had terrible word of mouth, and it was a film that should have been longer and it was cut down, so a lot of stuff didn't make sense in it. And it had the problem of the dual Superman. That's not what this film has. This film is like, it understands that people wanted Superman was actually hopeful, which had been the problem with the character for a while. Like, people were embarrassed by the character. It was like Superman's a optimistic character, and people became embarrassed by it, and decided to try and take the template of the Frank Miller Superman, who was a sellout to the US government, and Zack Snyder in his films had Superman be fairly cynical, and even the Bryan Singer one, Superman Returns, it wasn't as hopeful a character as the Christopher Reeve stuff from the 80s, even though he was a lonely god, and I liked that film a lot, but it wasn't for everybody. But for a long time, people have been embarrassed by Superman. Like, what do we do with Superman? It feels just weird. People are just embarrassed by him. They're embarrassed by the trunks over there in front of the costume. They were embarrassed by the optimism. And essentially, he got kind of kicked to animation and TV. In animation, he was good. In TV, they did Lois and Clark, then they did Smallville. But it was like this thing of, we've got a character who's popular, but we're kind of embarrassed by him, so we don't know really how to do him in this big screen. And that came through in the films, but they finally did get to him. But now with James Gunn's in charge, and he's not embarrassed by Superman, he's not embarrassed by the trunks, he's not embarrassed by the silliness. He embraces the silliness. So you get a Superman that actually can embrace the great qualities of the character and not feel like he should apologise for anything. And that's really what the character needed. It was rather simple. Just let the character be the character and work the narrative around it. So this film, it stars David Cornsent as Superman, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, and Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and a bunch of other characters. You've got some characters like the Justice Gang, although they don't have a official name yet, led by Guy Gardner, who's a Green Lantern. And you've got Mr. Terrific and you've got Hawk Girl as our two members. They're like hired by a billionaire to be superheroes for the world, but they also deal with Superman, and they go on fine. They think he's a bit of a Boy Scout. They think he's a bit of a, bit naive. And he's a no killing rule, which they don't have. And so there's tensions between those two groups, Superman and that group, but there's also respect. So it makes for an interesting dynamic. They're not antagonists, but they're not like full-on friends all the time either. They will criticise him. They will say he made mistakes. So that works nicely as an alternative group, and it builds the world up quite nicely. They're in the film, but they don't take away the emphasis of Superman. He's the main point of the film. They're just part of the world around him. The film also has the staples of like Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, all the gang from the Daily Planet, where Superman poses as Clark Kent still. But that's less of a part of this film. It comes into play later on in the story, but it's not really a major part of the plot for most of it. It's really about Superman in the modern world. The modern world is much more cynical. They have to have rules for what you can do, what you can't do. The way the modern world has rules. And the idea is, what does a superhero have to deal with in the modern world? Because in the comics, an old way of doing things, superheroes can do what they want and basically be forces for good. And then the cynicism appeared in the comics as like, well, that's open to abuse, which it is. So they brought that up. So now it's like, what is this world? There's much more cynical and is much more aware of abuses and the potential of abuses. How do they deal with someone who's naive and has a more simple view of the world, which is Superman? And that's basically the drama and how that's exploited by Lex Luthor to try and destroy Superman. And he does it insidiously, slowly but surely. He works his way around and he finds the weaknesses of Superman, which is he likes the people and he wants to protect the people, and he uses that against them, and he works out, he had a scheme that's been planned forever, and now we're seeing it come into fruition. And it's basically to keep Superman on his back and keep Superman like unbalanced, so we can make Superman look worse and worse and worse as the film goes on. And that's basically the story, is like Superman learning how to prove himself to be just in a world that wants to make him look, sinister. And it's a delight because basically the film has an optimism. Like, Lex Luthor does not win, obviously, but it becomes more of a test of Superman rather than, oh, Lex Luthor is right. It's much more like what he's doing tests Superman, tests his alliances, and tests his ability to get back up after some bad events happen to him, and tests his ability to deal with his friends and trust his friends. And that's what really the film's about, is just him learning to rely on other people as well as prove himself as a very just person who really wants the best for everyone. So it becomes like a set of trials for him, ultimately. I don't want to go into details of what happens, what doesn't happen. The film's just been released. I mean, we all know he's going to win because it's the start of a new series of films. But how he does it, I'm going to leave up to you. I mean, essentially, what I've said so far is things you can see in the trailers. What's delightful with the film is its optimism. I mean, it makes Lex Luthor be the evil villain and be unjustified, but also gives him enough motivation that is like people would understand his motivation. But he's also the villain, and Holt really plays up the villain. Holt really enjoys being the villain in this film, and he doesn't overdo it. He does just right. It's just someone who's been unhinged by Superman, but he's also very intelligent, very motivated, and doesn't care about people. He just wants what he wants. And subtly the film shows that over time, and also the same way subtly the film shows that Superman is ultimately very selfless. No matter what you criticise him for, he becomes selfless the more he goes on, and he can't stand people being killed, he can't stand people being injured. He is a character who is just genuinely decent. He's a genuinely decent person. So it becomes showing you these qualities come up as the film progresses and as you see him in action, really. But it also has a wonderful, like, 50s vibe in certain places. It does have a retro feel to some of the technology. Mr. Terrific has these machines that are all have a 50s vibe to them. And the Justice Gang have a 50s kind of look. There's a Hall of Justice, and they feel kind of silly in a 50s comic book way. But Gunn embraces that. He likes all that sort of silliness and taking it seriously. If these absurd characters existed, what would they actually do? He creates a world where there's been metahumans of like superheroes for centuries. Superman's just the most powerful one, and it's about him just finding his way in the world, really. But you've got lots of like evil genius plans by Luthor throughout the film. Lots of weird twists, some fun action, and the action is genuinely fun. It's not like the Zack Snyder stuff where they're battering things repeatedly, and it's like you lose the sense of scope because it's just basically punching into buildings, and buildings collapse, and then more punching. This one, there's actually events happening, and Superman has to be inventive to get out of them each time and work his way around problems. And it's not just about brute strength; it's about how clever you can be and use his strength to get out of situations. So it's much more satisfying, but also the action scenes are more knowingly ridiculous in some ways, but also much more thrilling because they're knowingly like outlandish and very kind of sci-fi, which means they're more of a threat to Superman rather than just do the punchy thing from before the Zack Snyder kind of films. So it becomes very joyful because it is a kind of throwback film, but also is modern in a way that it knows what people want, which is actual excitement in the action scene. And it delivers. I've heard some people criticise the ending for being too actiony, but I never really felt that. I was like, it's an adventure movie. You need an action ending. It delivers. It doesn't go too over the top. It does exactly what it needs to do. And it doesn't go on for like 10 hours the way that Man of Steel did. Man of Steel felt like it was going on and on and on and on and on. That's one it feels like there's a couple of action beats and then it finishes. And you've had some satisfying action beats, but it goes back to the story. And the story's woven into the actual action in a way they can be appreciated by the audience. Now, I saw it in the cinema. Cinema was fairly busy for a heatwave afternoon. It was surprisingly busy for the kind of how warm it is over here just now, and people seem to enjoy it. I feel this is a film that this is an audience film that people enjoy. This delivers. It sets up some things and for what's coming in subtle ways, but it doesn't spell them out. This is exactly what's going to happen next. It's just like it's introducing certain things that will probably develop as the series goes on. So yeah, if you like pulp done well, and pulp done with intelligence, by people who understand that it is pulp, and it doesn't have to be ashamed of if you do it right, this is it. It owes a lot more to like Superman 2, which is much more like an adventure with Superman and things happen, it becomes deeper as it goes along. Or something like Danger Diabolique, which is the kind of that pulp adventure, sense of adventure in a world that's, you know, enjoyable to see, or maybe Harry Hudson film. It's more like that than it is like a serious Superman, like, we must take this incredibly serious. No, it's fun. You know, you can take it as seriously as you want. There's levels to it, you can take it as seriously as, or as shallow as you want to do it. It works on various levels. I can definitely see people being really entranced with this one, like kids really enjoying it. It feels like a kids' film. Like when I saw it in the cinema, I did not see the kids running around the way you sometimes do in a film. We got a kids' film, or we take something to a kids' film. Sometimes you see lots of kids starting bored and running around like crazy. Never got that here. They're all sitting and watching the film. So that's a good sign. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I can't go any further without spoiling anything, so I don't want to do that. So go see the film. It is very enjoyable. Right, bye for now.